To get started on this job, I have disconnected the clutch cable, drained the coolant, drained the oil, and going to take the side case off. I've done videos on removing the side case and removing the clutch, so in order not to be redundant, I'm not going to go back through that again, but I've put some links up here so that you can go and look at the video on the basics of taking off this case. It also covers cleaning the screen, and then the other video covers removing the clutch and everything. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll join back up when I've got that done, and we'll see about what else has to be done. The clutch hub nut is off, and the nut for the end of the crankshaft is off. I found out that really the best way to do things with this EBC tool is to simply cut the handle off, and that way you can easily fit it either over or above, under the pivot for the swing arm. That's a lot easier. The handle's going to bend anyway if you try and get some purchase on anything that's more than about a ½ an inch from right in here, so you might as well cut it off, and that makes life a whole lot easier. So now we can pull the clutch basket off. What we're looking at now is a plug that's in here. This is the bore that the Kickstarter goes into, so I've got to get that plug out. This shaft here has a circlip on the end of it and a spacer. Got to take that circlip off, pull that spacer off, and this is where the idler gear goes. We've also got to replace this primary gear here. And in order to do that, I've got to get the oil pump off. So I'm going to pull the oil pump off now and set it aside, and then we'll see about getting the primary gears off the end of the crankshaft. Okay, I'll just carefully set that down on the towel, and I'm going to reuse that, and I'm going to not reuse this, but I'd like to reuse the key if I can. Okay, we'll slip the new primary gear onto the end of the crankshaft. And then put the oil pump gear back on. We'll just leave that like that. I'm going to try and get this circlip off. There we go. And then pull that spacer. The idler gear is backed up by a thin thrust washer, and then the idler gear goes over that, and then there's another thin thrust washer that goes on top of the idler gear, and then the last thing to go into place is the circlip. I have to remove that plug now, and I'm going to take a small punch and give it a couple of whaps and rotate it in the bore. And then just grab it with a pair of pliers and pull it out. And that's that bore is blind, but with a small hole at the top. And so that plug was keeping the oil from gushing out of there. And of course, as I mentioned before, this is the bore that the Kickstarter rides into. So I'm going to go ahead and trial fit that starter. The kickstart assembly plugs into that bore and engages with the idler, and then the return spring comes around and plugs into a small hole in the case. And as the engine is running, of course, it turns in this direction, and you hear quite a bit of a ratcheting sound because of the ratchet that's on the back. It sounds something like that, which would probably drive you nuts. So there are two plates that go in here, and as the kickstart lever comes back up, those plates cam against this surface here and pull that back so that the gear can spin freely. So I'm going to go ahead now and put those plates in, do a trial run with the kickstart lever, make sure that everything works right, and then we'll proceed with the reassembly. There are two plates that go in. The small thin one that goes in the back is a stopper for the ratchet arm, and the thick outer one is the one that provides the camming action. So I'm going to go ahead and stick those things in right now. I'm not going to torque them down. I'll do that later. I'm just trying to get a trial run here to make sure that everything works as it's supposed to. So let me grab the Kickstarter assembly and slip that in. And I'll once again bring the spring around, plug it into the little hole. There. Now with the Kickstarter lever, I'll just gently put that on the outer portion, and that seems to work. And as that stops, the cam is going back, everything is free, so the assembly is working the way it's supposed to. Good. We'll start the reassembly. The first thing to go on is the bushing for the clutch shaft, and then the clutch basket. And it helps if you just wiggle this a little bit to get that to slip down. Then goes the clutch hub and its washer and nut, and we'll just spin that down and see how it goes. Okay, the primary gears and the oil pump driver are here, so we'll go ahead and put its lock washer and its nut on. We won't quite torque it down, of course. And then we've got to put the oil pump back on. After this is on, I've got to reassemble the clutch. Well, I've got to torque these down properly and then reassemble the clutch. And let's see, that's about it, I think. After that is done, then the case can go back on and we can try this thing out. So we'll join back up after I've got the clutch assembled. The clutch is now all in place, everything is torqued down, everything's staked down, so the moment of truth is getting closer and closer. And so on goes the side cover. That's a little stubborn. There we go. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and bolt that in place and then come back and do the water pump and then fill it back up with oil and see what happens.